Rebirth Island has got super popular in Warzone recently, and I know you guys are loving it, which is why today I'm going to share with you some settings to improve your game, specifically when playing Rebirth Island. Rebirth Island of course differs from the traditional Battle Royale maps, such as Verdansk and Caldera, simply because they are just much bigger. So Rebirth Island being the smaller map means you end up in a lot more engagements with enemies, meaning your settings might not be finely attuned to those closer range gunfights. So let's start by taking a look at graphics. So first of all, we've got camera movement. The default is 100% with this, but you want to put it down to 50%. This just makes it so much easier to see and doesn't make you seasick when you're running around. Next up, we've got world and weapon motion blur. Put these both on disabled. We want no distractions on our screen. And then the same goes for film grain. We want this on 0. We just want to see as clearly as possible. And then the same kind of goes for dismemberment and gore effects. These don't impact the game hugely, so don't worry about it too much. I disable them, but you can do what you like. Then we have brightness. I put mine on 45 here, and that's simply because when Warzone Pacific came out and that big Caldera update, it basically brightened up both Rebirth Island and Caldera. So now if you put your brightness settings too high, you get a little bit of saturation and colours seem to wash into one another, and you can't really tell some backgrounds from foregrounds. So I suggest putting your brightness a little bit lower than what some people suggest. I'd suggest actually below 50, somewhere around 45 like I am is great. This way it's still bright enough to see people in dark corners of the map and things like that, but you still get those colours to pop. Then lastly for graphics we have on-demand texture streaming, and ordinarily I'd say enable this and put it on the highest quality you can. You of course want to see the map in the highest quality you can, meaning you can just see more clearly. But if you play on console and you're getting some graphics issues, this is one of the settings you need to disable, and you'll have a much stable environment on Warzone. Now let's head over to the specific controller settings themselves. Now for button layout, I run stick and move, but I would either recommend stick and move like I play on, bumper jumper, or I would recommend tactical. All of these ensure that just a normal controller can be used in such a way that your movement is more enhanced. So we're talking about jump shotting that little bit easier, we're talking about drop shotting easier, we're talking about slide cancelling a little bit easier. So stick and move, which I play on, ensures that I can jump shot easier, so basically the right analog becomes the button that I jump with. Tactical of course means this right analog you crouch with and go prone with, so there are positives and weaknesses to each of these, and actually bumper jumper tactical probably offers the best holistic button layout for all the types of movements, but it is very hard to get used to. Either way, I'd recommend one of those three because you will get an advantage on Rebirth Island for those higher level movement techniques. Then some settings here I just leave on default, you don't have to worry about them too much. But then we get to dead zone, and basically you want this setting on the lowest it can go without having stick drift. So if you do get stick drift on your screen, put these settings up until it stops basically. But you do have to remember, the higher that you do go with dead zone, the slower your reactions are going to be in terms of you putting your input into the controller, then that inputting onto the screen. The maximum dead zones, leave these on 0.99, it doesn't matter. The sensitivity is obviously up to you, but I play on 80 FOV because I'm on console, so these are actually reasonably low to medium, I'd say, at 6.6. But as a rule of thumb, you want your sensitivity as high as you can go, as long as you can still hit your shots. And this is particularly the case on Rebirth Island, where you have a lot of close range engagements and you need to be spinning around as quickly as possible quite a lot of the time. Then as we come down the list, we have this custom sensitivity multiplier per zoom. Now this can be tricky to get right, but basically if you're playing on higher sensitivities, you absolutely want to put your low zoom and your high zoom on quite low multipliers, such as 0.68 as I have here. Now this is just an example of someone playing on a higher sensitivity. If you play on something a little bit lower, such as I do, put that up to 0.7 or maybe 0.8, because obviously if your sensitivity is quite low, if you put your ADS sensitivity multiplier quite low, you're going to be really slowly looking across your screen, and you don't want that. On high sensitivity though, you actually do want your aim to be slowed down quite a lot, otherwise it's going to be hard to hit shots. Then that brings us to the aim response curve type, and absolutely on Rebirth Island, you want to be running dynamic. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these settings right now, I have a whole video dedicated to that, but basically in a nutshell, Dynamic means when you push on your sticks, you get a fast response on screen initially before it slows down. A lot of people like to run this because it gives them a snappier shot, especially at the close to medium range. Again, for aim assist, I made a whole video just dedicated to that. But for Rebirth Island, I'd actually recommend just standard, because the drag isn't too strong where it distracts you with more than one enemies at close range, but it gives you enough of a help when you need it. Then for many of these settings, like I say, we're talking pretty standard and what you'd normally run on Battle Royale. I will say though that the armor plate behavior as apply all is absolutely fantastic. Make sure you're running that if you're not already. It just means you're clicking less and you can focus on the game a little bit more. And obviously you can cancel putting them on if you need to. Now the last two settings here are very important for Battle Royale anyway, but they are particularly important in Rebirth Island. One of those settings is the automatic tack sprint, and you absolutely want this enabled. This basically means you can get into a full sprint as fast as possible just by pushing forward on your analog stick, meaning your movement is so much quicker, and basically you don't get hit as often because you can just get out of there once you see a little bit of danger or maybe take a bullet. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it is absolutely fantastic once you master it. Then lastly, we have parachute auto deploy. You absolutely want this disabled. And the reason for this is when it's enabled, it basically automatically kicks in, say, 10-15 meters from the ground, but when it's disabled, you can manually pull your chute up, say 8 to 10 meters to the ground, meaning you'll beat anyone to the ground who's got it on automatic, or you can match people who've got it on disabled. Getting to the ground quicker in Rebirth Island is the difference between life and death, winning and losing, having a big kill game and not sometimes. Especially when you take into account it's obviously resurgence, so you're flying back in quite a lot. I really hope this video helped you out, and if you want to know how to rank up your weapons as fast as possible, by the way, you might want to check this video out. Alright, see ya!